Correct. Thank you.
Yep. All right. I think we are all ready to get started. So, Rachel, whenever you are ready, go ahead.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our pre-bid conference. My name is Rachel Vanderveen, and I'm the Assistant Director with the Housing Department here in San Jose. And I'm joined by a fantastic team that has been working very hard to pull all of this together. So I would like to just start by introducing them. So let's see, we can go with Heather. You want to say hi?
I'll do it off mute. Yes, my name is Heather Bromfield. I'm a Partnership for the Bay's Future Fellow with the Policy Division with the San Jose Housing Department. I'll pass it to Josh.
Hi, everybody. Josh Ishimatsu, Acting Division Manager for Policy and some other stuff. I'll pass to Kristen.
Hi, all. I'm Kristen Clements. I'm an Acting Deputy Director, and I work with the Grants Team Policy and Rent Stabilization. I'll pass it to Ying.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ying Sham. I am Assistant to the Admin Officer, and I'll pass it off to Lauren.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren DiCarlo. I am a Development Officer on the Grants Team. I'll give it to Lorena.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lorena Lopez, and I'm part of the Asset Management Team.
All right, I think that was everyone. All right, so again, what we did today was pull together a group of staff that can provide support, be here to answer questions, and just help you through our notice of funding availability process. So we are very excited that you're here today to engage, and we are energized about this opportunity and hope that we can support as you walk through. So with that, we can go ahead with the presentation.
Josh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Hi, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Josh Ishimatsu. And I am, like I said, Acting Division Manager with the San Jose Housing Department. And before I get into the presentation, I just wanted to make a related personal note. So I am a third-generation San Josean, and I'm somebody who's spent most of my adult professional life working for nonprofit organizations involved in neighborhood-based community development. And most of this work was outside of the city of San Jose. And I've always felt that neighborhood-based community development was something that has been missing in this city. So I am really happy and excited to see you all here and to play my small part in supporting this work in the city of San Jose. So all that being said, this meeting is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be available on the Housing Department's website. And the URL is on the screen, and if somebody from staff could put it into the chat or Q&A, that would be great. So just a quick overview of the presentation today. After this quick housekeeping, I'll review the background of the NOFA, timeline of the NOFA, talk a little bit about eligible projects and eligible applicants, and I'll start to get us into some of the NOFA details, and then I'll hand over to Heather to talk more about the application, including scoring. And then Ying will go over how to apply on Bid and Go. And at the end, we'll have some time for questions and answers about the NOFA and the process. But before I get into the NOFA itself, a little bit about logistics and asking questions. So we are in the webinar mode for Zoom, which means that you can submit questions anonymously to the hosts using the Q&A function. We'll be generally waiting to the question and answer portion of the presentation today to answer questions. and we'll try to answer them all at once, but we may address an immediate point of clarification during the presentation as necessary. After this pre-bid conference, any questions about the NOFA should be emailed to Mark Gearhart at mark.gearhart@sanjoseca, all one word, .gov. Applicants must reference in the subject line NOFA CSJ HSG 09-15-2023. So the city will not respond to questions submitted in any other manner or format. And as I mentioned earlier, the recording will be available online. So just a quick couple quick notes on the background of this NOFA. This is something that comes out of the city's anti-displacement working group, as well as the discussions and advocacy leading up to the citywide anti-displacement strategy. Many in the community have identified the need for more community-level community development capacity, especially for acquisition and rehabilitation of existing low-cost housing. And this is an explicit anti-displacement strategy in the citywide residential anti-displacement strategy. Council authorized the funding for this NOFA for the community development capacity building via the Google development agreement. This funding is separate from the larger 200 million allocation that will flow through the Community Stabilization and Opportunity Pathways Commissions. It's funding that the city already has dedicated for this purpose. So here's the timeline for the NOFA. The NOFA was released the Friday before last. We are right now in the optional pre-bid submission. So a couple changes from what was in the original text of the NOFA. We are extending the deadline for submissions of questions. This will now be October 11th at 3 p.m. And the deadline for the city to post answer to these questions has also been extended 1 week to October 20th, also at 3 p.m. All applications are due by 11:59 p.m. on November 14th, 2023. So this is basically 2 months from the issuance of the NOFA. The city will publish our award recommendations on December 8th, 2023. And the deadline to submit an appeal will be 3 p.m. on December 22nd, 2023. And after reviewing all appeals, notifications of final awards will be early in 2024, January 8th, 2024. Yeah, thank you. So eligibility. All applicants must be a 501c3 nonprofit organization or in the process of getting a 501c3 certification. Applicants must be based in San Jose or be active in the region with a documentable commitment to working in San Jose. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a couple slides. The applicant should be starting to do some form of community development work and wanting to build the capacity to do more. You're going to have to describe what community development projects or activities you're already doing and what you plan on doing. This could be preservation, acquisition rehab, it could be tenant engagement, civic empowerment, economic development, etc. There's a broad range of stuff you could be doing. And you don't have to be experts already. This is capacity building, right? You know, the purpose is to help build expertise. However, we do want to see that this is a commitment, that this isn't, this is an area of work that you take seriously. It isn't something that you take lightly. So documentation that should be submitted with the NOFA. In the NOFA and in the application form, the city will be asking for different forms of documentation for things about your mission, your relationship to your community, and your planned activities as examples. As far as your planned activities. Again, we're not expecting you to have every little thing figured out. Again, this is for capacity building. It is to help you figure stuff out. But we want you to be able to articulate your vision, what it is you're trying to do, and if you get the grant, how are you going to get, how are you trying to get there? So some of the documentation we're asking for must be provided in the format that is specified in the application form. For example, there's a proposed budget, which Heather will be talking about later during her part of the presentation. Other information is required, but can be provided in whatever format you have it in. For example, if you have anything that documents how you engage with your community, a newsletter or photos or a newspaper article, these are things that can be attached. A little bit more about documentation. This next slide shows the documentation that can be submitted to demonstrate organizational commitment to the geography, to San Jose, and to the issue area, to community development. And this could be that you're committed to working in a specific neighborhood in San Jose, as an example. And that you work on housing issues or tenant empowerment or small business assistance or whatever the applicable subject matter area is. So there are a lot of different documents that can be submitted to fulfill this item. And, it can be your official organizational documents, such as your bylaws or your articles of incorporation. And it can be from organizational promotional materials, like an annual report or, anything that, or pamphlets or flyers that you produce. There are a lot of different options. But I want to, strongly emphasize that for this item, you have to submit something. So, on the form, it says optional, but that's because, you don't have to submit everything, but you do have to submit at least one thing, and more than one thing. Submitting more than one thing is also okay, but you have to submit at least one thing that demonstrates your commitment to the work and your commitment to the place. So I will now hand the presentation over to Heather, and she'll discuss scoring.
All right, thank you, Josh. Regarding scoring, as you'll see in the NOFA itself, there are 4 categories that will be scored in a total of 100 points. It can be scored across those 4 categories. In addition, capacity building projects with an affordable housing acquisition and rehabilitation focus can receive up to 10 bonus points. So the maximum total number of points is 110. When it comes time for evaluation, staff are going to first do a basic evaluation as to whether the applications are complete before scoring the full applications. So please be sure to triple check your submissions. Applications must be complete. Afterwards, the panel will assess full applications, and as decisions are being made on awards, applicants should be advised that more information or more documentation might be requested by the panel in order to help them with their evaluation. Next slide, please. All right, so getting into the detailed breakdown of scoring, the first category is staff capacity and work plan. So applicants will be evaluated on dedicated staff, increased community development capability, and on the feasibility of their work plan. Applicants are going to be required to submit a description of their staffing plan, a detailed work plan, and their budget. As Josh mentioned, I'm going to be running through a sample budget spreadsheet in just a few minutes. The documentation should demonstrate that either current staff has enough time to dedicate to the effort that they're proposing to undertake, or that the funding request will be used to hire or shift staff into roles to help them execute the effort that's being proposed. So for example, if applicants are planning to execute proposed activities using current staff time, they should indicate how the staff members' responsibilities will shift in order to allow them to do this. And finally, the work plan should lay out clear milestones and an achievable schedule that's linked to a detailed budget. All right, community impact. So applicants must clearly demonstrate that their project is going to have will increase their ability to have an impact on the community on the issues that the applicant is working on. So applicants should also demonstrate community support. This can be done through letters of support from other community groups or groups of people in the community, or evidence of past efforts that were supported by the community. Applicants can also demonstrate how the community will be involved in the project through a community engagement plan, which should detail opportunities for input and participation. And finally, points will be awarded if applicants can show an impact on a specific location or target community. So one important note on this last point is that while full points are going to be awarded to applicants who can show a direct impact on a specific either geographic community or quote unquote target population, because of California Proposition 209, target populations can actually not be defined by racial or ethnic identity, national origin, sex, or linguistic groups. So just be aware of that when you are defining your target populations. Next slide, please. And finally, or not finally, sorry. Third, we have organizational commitment. So applicants must document a strong commitment to anti-displacement activities, advancing community ownership and civic power, and/or affordable housing acquisition and rehabilitation. So this commitment to any of these activities can be shown through summaries of past projects, current strategic planning documents that the organization has, organizational mission statements, or staff positions that are dedicated to this work. If the applicant is requesting funding for lines of work that they have not previously undertaken in any of these categories, they should provide evidence of for this project track record project track record. They should provide evidence of effective project execution on other past projects, and the housing department will evaluate that on a case-by-case basis. Next slide, please. Financial capacity is the fourth category. So this includes good standing, the organization is in good standing, financial controls to administer funding, and non-city resources. So basically, applicants should submit documentation that demonstrates that the organization is currently in good financial standing with clear internal financial controls. Internal financial controls are policies and procedures that are implemented by an organization to ensure that their financial reports are reliable, their operations are efficient, and activities that they're performing are compliant with applicable laws and regulations. The applicant's financial condition must not indicate any adverse conditions that might materially impair the applicant's ability to perform. Next slide. And as I previously mentioned, there are 10 bonus points that are available for organizations whose projects will advance their capacity for affordable housing acquisition and rehabilitation, also known as AC Rehab. Organizations in various phases of their ability to undertake AC Rehab projects can qualify for these bonus points. So for example, if an organization already has a very small amount of AC Rehab experience and is looking to expand their staff or consultant capacity, they would be able to apply for this capacity building funding and would qualify for these bonus points. Or alternatively, if it's an organization that is interested in pursuing its first AC Rehab project and which needs to hire a consultant or staff member to just go through the initial stages of identifying properties and conducting basic due diligence to help the organization determine which projects make sense to pursue, that is also eligible, and they can also qualify for these points if that is what they're proposing to do. Next slide, please. Yep. In the next few slides, I'm going to walk through a sample budget scenario for an organization that is applying for capacity building funds to do AC Rehab. There are multiple eligible uses, as hopefully everyone saw in the NOFA itself. But just for the purposes of this illustration, we are doing this AC Rehab example. In this scenario, XYZ nonprofit is going to acquire and rehabilitate a 10-unit apartment building in the Kennedy neighborhood, but they currently don't have the staff with the expertise to execute it. And this is an affordable project, right? So after they acquire it, they're going to be converting the building to deed restricted affordable housing. They're applying for the capacity building funds to hire a full-time project manager. And as part of this project, they also plan to engage the tenants that live in the building already and inform them of their plans to acquire and rehabilitate the building. And they also intend to conduct outreach within the neighborhood about the project. So those are basically the parameters. And in the next slide, we'll see how that is reflected in the budget template. Next slide, please. All right. So there's 5 sections in this budget template. This is the first section. And this is available on Bidingo. So note that we know that it'll look a little bit different for organizations that are applying to do other kinds of capacity building, but hopefully there's enough that's transferable between applications for this to be helpful for everyone. This first section is staff costs. You'll see prompts for the position title, estimated hourly rate, the total estimated hours needed of this person's time. That will multiply out to get you the total funding requested for that person. We'll also need to see the deliverables that each person is going to provide and the approximate due date. So we're assuming for this hypothetical application that about 80 hours of the executive director's time is going to be needed over the 2-year grant period. Just for management of the grant, reporting, working on that sort of stuff. And also because the hypothetical proposal involves both tenant and community outreach, we're assuming that there's going to be some staff time needed for 2 community organizers. So those are included in here too. A note on the due dates column. So if, for example, your staff time is going to be needed for management of the grant on an ongoing regular basis, or there's ongoing and regular engagement happening, and there aren't necessarily like obvious deliverables, for example, for staff time, you might have a hard time figuring out what your due dates are. And so what we're recommending is that you do what we've proposed here. These dates reflect that there will be, in-depth report backs to the housing department at the year 1 and year 2 marks. And this is in addition to other quarterly report backs that we are also going to be conducting with awardees. So for organizations that find themselves in situations where, this is just an ongoing staff need, and the deliverables are really ongoing over the course of the grant. So you can go ahead and use these dates as a template. We've chosen February of 2025 and 2026 because the awards are going to be announced in January of 2024, and we expect that the grant period will start in February. So February 2025 and 26 will be about a year after the beginning of the grant period. Next slide, please. All right, so this second section is for, in the budget template is for consultants, any consultants you might hire. So similar to what we showed for staff time, we're asking for hourly rates, estimated number of hours needed, the deliverables that they'll be providing, and an approximate due date. One important note is that while we've not made it a required document for scoring, we do want to see the name of the consulting firm that you are planning to hire, that you would be hiring. We do want to know who this would be, and if you can also provide a resume as an attachment on Bidingo, that is highly, highly desired of the person or the firm that you would be hiring as a consultant. Basically, we want to know that you have already done research on, who you would hire to do this work. We want to make sure that they, have availability so that once these grants are dispersed, we would have, basically the project could hit the ground running and there won't be hiccups with waiting to get a consultant on contract, right? We kind of want to have them lined up in advance. We want to know, and we want to know who it's going to be and make sure that for the purposes of evaluating the feasibility that, this consultant is actually going to be able to execute on what's being proposed. Next slide, please. All right, and then this is section C, D, and E. So section C is for materials, section D is for contracts for services and trainings, and section E is for other. So not all of these may apply to everyone. So if they don't worry about it. But sections C and D are pretty straightforward. So we want to know for both of these what materials, services, or trainings are being requested, obviously how much they cost, what the deliverables are. And then, note that in this sample budget, because we know that this hypothetical organization is requesting funding for community to be able to perform community meetings, right? We're putting some of the materials costs under section C. Under due dates, we don't expect you to list, every meeting date here, right? If you're doing, 8 meetings or 15 meetings, we don't need to see all of those in this template. But we would like to see, the schedule laid out more fully in other documentation that you are submitting. And then finally, section E is for other costs. These are for anything that doesn't quite fit in any of the categories that we've gone through so far. And also if organizations do want to use some of the capacity building grants to cover indirect costs, they may do so. As we're showing here, note though that all of the indirect costs are going to be capped at 10% of the total grant award. And then one final note, the total line is not shown in this slide, but just make sure that all of your subtotals add up correctly, and that your grand total is lined up with all of the subtotals for each of these sections. That's really important just for making sure we don't have any hiccups later in the process. And then next slide, please. Just a few other final notes before I pass the presentation over to Lauren to talk about Bedingo. I'm sorry, to Ying to talk about Bedingo. So we are, just informing everyone that the information that applicants provide can be subject to public records requests. Just be aware of this. For applicants that intend to hire a consultant, this is what I had just referred to verbally, but this is, in writing so that folks after this webinar, when they're looking at the slides, can see this as well. And finally, regarding the reporting, in the NOFA itself, we are stating that, there are going to be quarterly check-ins. About 2 of these per year are going to be a little bit briefer, maybe a little bit more informal, but there will be definitely 2 semi-annual in-depth financial reports for each year of the grant. So with that, I believe this is a wrap, and so I will pass it on to Ying.
Thanks, Heather. I'm going to try to go through these slides pretty quickly. So I'm doing a quick intro to Bedingo, which is the portal where you will be submitting your applications. We recommend that new users register for a free account as soon as possible because the approval process might take a few days. So I'll go over how to register and then how to upload files to submit an application. And I'm pretty new to Bedingo myself, so if you have any questions I can't answer, I'm happy to hunt those answers down for you after this meeting. But the best resource would be Bedingo's customer support team, and their contact is listed in this slide. Next slide, please. So to register, you'll need to go to bedingo.com/San Jose. If you don't add the /San Jose, you'll be brought to the main page and eventually end up at a paywall. So make sure you're starting on this site. Here you can view the NOFA with an account, without an account. You can just scroll down to the search bar and look up the NOFA's name, but you do have to be specific about what you type in when you use the search function. I noticed that if I didn't type in NOFA-capacity building exactly, the NOFA didn't show up for me. So to start the registration process, you'll click on the vendor registration button, and then next slide, please. And you'll be taken to this page where you will be asked to select categories that are relevant to your organization. So just go ahead and select the relevant ones and then click continue application. Next slide, please. Thank you. And this part is pretty straightforward. You'll create your user ID, which is your email, and then you'll create a password and hit next. Next slide, please. And then you'll be asked for more information about your organization, so go ahead and fill that in and all the required fields, and then click save and go to verification. Next slide. Thank you. And that's it. That's the last step. So you'll have a chance to review and modify the information. If everything looks good to go, you'll hit submit, and then you'll get a confirmation that says registration complete. So now that you've made an account, we can go ahead and practice submitting an application. Next slide, please. So we'll go back to the city's Dingo site. Remember the /San Jose, and then you'll sign in the top right corner. And if you have any technical difficulties, the contact information for Badingo is located on that front page, so you can access that at any time. Next slide, please. And then after you've signed in, you can scroll down on that page, like I mentioned before, search up the NOFA, and all of these links highlighted in yellow lead you to the same place, which is where the NOFA is posted. So you can click any of them, but we're just going to click Start Submission. Next slide, please. And then you'll be taken to the NOFA page. It's not pictured here, but it'll have some information about due dates, important updates, amendments, things like that. A countdown as well to when the application is due. And if you scroll down, there are two sections that I wanted to highlight. The first is the intent to respond section. It's optional, but we recommend it. We'd like to know who's interested in applying for this NOFA. And the second option, or the second area, is the Q&A board, which I'm highlighting for you to ignore because we'll be collecting questions through email instead. So please send them to markgerhart@sanjoseca.gov. And next slide, please. So if you continue scrolling down that screen, you'll end up at the online submission tab. So go ahead and click that click here button, and then you'll get brought to your own application page. So next slide, please. And when you get sent to your application page, a pop-up window will appear. Just read through it, click cancel if you aren't ready to submit an application. Next slide, please. Thank you. And then behind the pop-up window is your application page. This is where you'll find all the materials we posted for the NOFA. If we've made any edits to the NOFA, those changes are tracked. You'll see it in red and it'll be crossed out. And the updated version will be about there for you to access. So just make sure you're always using the most updated documents uploaded. You'll notice that we have updated the NOFA itself. That's to accommodate the changes to the Q&A deadline. And there's also an updated Excel sheet attachment. It has a correction to a cell formula, so make sure you use that attachment instead. And to upload is pretty straightforward. You're just going to click the upload attachment button. Next slide, please. And you'll just choose a file, add a description, and then upload the document. You can also delete here if needed. Next slide, please. Thank you. And then when you're done uploading all of your files and you're sure that you're ready to submit, you can go ahead and click either of the buttons on the bottom, review response before submission or view checklist items. And then that pop-up window is going to come back again. Next slide, please. And this time you're going to read through it, make sure you follow all the instructions, and then click submit. Next slide, please. You'll get a confirmation in the pop-up window, and you'll also get an email confirmation saying that you submitted your application. You are allowed to continue making changes to your application even after you've submitted, but it will stop by the time of the deadline. So November 14th, 11:59 p.m. And if you have any other questions, I have a list of resources here on the right that you can access. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. With that, I will hand it back to Heather and Josh for the Q&A.
Great, thank you so much, Ying. And we have ample time for Q&A, which is great. So the first question that I'm seeing, maybe Josh, you can take this one. This is, can you define quote unquote anti-displacement emphasis in terms of what makes a 501c3 eligible?
These are actually separate things, right? If I'm understanding the question, you have to be a 501c3 or in the process of becoming a 501c3 to be eligible for this funding. And then on top of that, or, we also want, people to be, we want organizations that are working to prevent, displacement of people who are living in San Jose. But it's not, like 501 anti-displacement emphasis is not a necessary condition of being 501c3. That's just like a nonprofit IRS designation.
All right, and if any follow-up is needed, feel free to just follow up on the Q&A. If we are, this goes for anyone's questions. If we are not quite hitting the mark on what you were hoping to hear for a response, just let us know. The second question I'm seeing is, can we confirm that construction costs for affordable housing rehab would not be an eligible project? Correct. Construction costs, any actual paying for any acquisitions or paying for the rehab, it would not be covered as a project under this grant. However, we are going to be releasing very soon a separate NOFA for acquisition rehabilitation. This will be coming out in the fall. So just keep an eye out, it'll be very soon. And that will be $5 million total for acquisition rehabilitation. I think that's, we can head to the next question. So would homeless service providers be considered under the anti-displacement eligibility requirement? Josh, do you want to take this one?
Sure. I don't see any reason why not. Somebody who provides homeless services, it's helping keep people here from being displaced. And I think we'd want to see you make that argument, and to say that in your application, that how it fits in with how your work fits in with, preventing people from being displaced from the city of San Jose.
All right. Then for the next one, are taxes and benefits meant to be baked into the hourly rate? I assume that we're talking about for staff costs. What I did mean to say when you were going through that slide is that, what I would just suggest is that if you have an annual salary for your staff, just take the annual salary and then divide that into, 52 weeks a year and, basically come up with an hourly rate that way.
All staffing costs are eligible. Taxes and benefits, are also eligible. We may want to see documentation of that, like when you're invoicing, but those are also eligible costs.
Okay. The next question was, can rehab include planning for necessary complex repairs and structural improvements to an existing affordable housing project that's owned by a nonprofit applicant? So this is just for rehab, not for acquisition. Josh, do you want to take that?
When we're saying acquisition rehab, we're specifically thinking about existing housing that is not already covenanted as affordable housing. So it would be acquisition rehab of housing that doesn't have affordable housing restrictions on it. So market rate housing that would be purchased and converted to affordable housing. So it wouldn't necessarily be for a rehab of an existing building.
All right. And then I'm seeing what is the allowable indirect cost rate that we may use? So yeah, this is up to 10% of the total grant. I think that's, I don't know if there's anything we need more to say on that, Josh.
Yeah, we don't need this.
Okay.
That's good.
The activities listed in the NOFA focused on preservation almost entirely. Will production-related activities, including pre-development, be considered an eligible activity?
So production-related activities are also eligible. I mean, we want to emphasize and privilege preservation. So there's an emphasis on preservation, but it's not exclusive. Other activities and programs that are community development, including production, are also eligible.
Great. And then next question is, does advocacy and policy work fall under civic power? This is going to be a yes, but with a caveat. So there are certain limitations to what kinds of projects can be funded. The capacity building cannot be to increase civic power, or rather, it cannot be focused on a specific policy item. So if we're talking about increasing civic power through increasing local advocacy power broadly, that is okay. But if it is to advocate for a specific policy, that will not be eligible. And this is there's more details on what on this, I believe, in the opening section of the NOFA. In the same section where it says, the funding cannot be used for capacity building on like religious activities, for example, or on lobbying. I think we resolved this. I think this is a clarification of the previous question on the indirect costs. I think we've taken care of that. The next question is, are there any partnership restrictions? For example, could a lead nonprofit partner with a for-profit company for the solution as long as the 501c3 is prime? Josh, do you want to take that?
Well, the 501c3 application is, 501c3 organizations are the only eligible applicants, or 501c3 or in the process of becoming 501c3. So, you can talk about, like, as the 501c3 organization, if your community development activity is going to include partnering with a for-profit company, that is fine. That can be your activity. But the only applicant for this funding, the only eligible applicants for this funding are 501c3 or 501c3 in the process of becoming organizations.
But like, I think as an example, maybe if there's for example, a joint venture between a nonprofit applicant and a for-profit applicant to do an ag rehab project, as Josh said, as long as the nonprofit is the one that's applying for the funding and it's going to, this project will increase their, in-house capacity to do this kind of work, then I think we would be in agreement that it's eligible.
Yes. I mean, I think it's like, you'd have to make a case for why what you're doing builds your capacity, that this is serving all the goals of your organization and of this program. But yes, I mean, it would be eligible in the case of yes.
All right. Next question is there an anti-displacement plan document available for our reference? We had was it published in 2020, Josh, the anti-displacement strategic plan?
I mean, are you talking about like what your plan is to do anti-displacement work, or the types of activities that are, anti-displacement? I'm not sure that I completely understand the question.
Yeah, if you can, the city's plan. Yes, I'm seeing the clarification.
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Heather.
Yeah, no, sorry. So there is an anti-displacement strategic plan that was published a few years ago. It should be, unfortunately, we don't have the chat set up, so we can't, oh, actually, that's not true. I can type a link as a response. So I will try and do that if Josh wants to handle the next couple of questions while I look that up.
Yeah, so the next question is the 5 million upcoming acquisition rehab NOFA, would that cover construction costs? Yes, it is. It is explicitly designed to cover project development costs, including construction costs. If the next question is if an organization just became a 501c3 and doesn't have prior year audits, are they still eligible to apply? Yes, an organization that is newly 501c3 and does not have prior year audits is still eligible to apply. You might want to, if you previously had a fiscal sponsor, you might want to provide a letter from your fiscal sponsor, or in response to sort of like the financial controls question. But you were a new 501c3 without previous year's audits is eligible to apply. Specifically related to your requirement on financial statements of prior 2 years. Yes. So if you have any sort of statements that are from, if you from a previous fiscal sponsor, if you existed prior, but if not, you don't. I mean, that's just what that is. It is what it is, but you'd still be eligible to apply. Are there more questions?
I think we have reached the end. If anyone has any follow-ups to anything that we have said in the Q&A, maybe I'll let people finish typing for the next 60 seconds or so. And while we are waiting, we can maybe go to the next slide and just talk about what happens if you think of the perfect question right after we end this webinar. And so as Josh previously mentioned, you do still have the opportunity to send us questions. You have to send them to Mark Gerhardt at sanjoseca.gov. So it's mark.gerhardt at sanjoseca.gov. We again extended the deadline to October 11th at 3 p.m. You must include this text that we're showing here in the subject line of the email. And everything that has been asked today and everything that we receive in questions via email will all be made available online in a summary. So everyone will be able to view all of the questions and all the responses. And then as we've mentioned previously, and you've seen, this is being recorded, and we're going to post it online as soon as we can. So in the next few business days. And also, I believe we're going to try and post the slides as well. So still no more questions coming in, so we might be able to adjourn a little bit early. I'll just give folks another minute or so in case anything comes up. All right, well, I'm not seeing any activity, so I think we can close out early. So yeah, thank you everyone so much for your attendance, and we look forward to seeing applications and furthering the anti-displacement work and civic power and civic engagement work that we're all really committed to in San Jose.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really excited to see what people are coming up with. So thank you.